Um, OneNote, my upload isn't always the best. My team tells me sometimes it cuts out right when I'm saying something important. I took steps today, but if you can go and turn off your video, so I'm the only one pushing video, that will probably help avoid any headaches. Also, it's a neurodiversity talk, so we're in charge now. We don't need to see everybody's face. I'll touch on that more later. So welcome to my brain, what neurodiversity means in my life and how you can, what I want to say here, help me, not really support me. Sure, that's nice, but I don't really want you to do things for me. Include me. I definitely want to be included. But that's still, I don't want to be excluded, but that's like an awkward phrasing. How you can be inclusive. That's the right word. Yeah. Little bit of a lame ND joke there. Point being, we struggle a lot over precision in language, and analysis paralysis is a real thing. This is an actual conversation that went on in my head. And there's all kinds of meta on this talk about what writing it as an ND person looks like, including, well, anyway, moving on. A bit of an agenda here. Introduce myself, some caveats I want to touch on first. What neurodiversity, specifically autism spectrum disorder, means to me, the individual. What does that hurt and help in my life, in my work environment? A couple of longer stories, depending on where we are with time. How you can be inclusive in a work environment, and then Q&A. Got an hour book for this slide. I don't really want to take all that time, but if you know neurodiverse people, we have a lot of words, so we'll see how we do. First of all, I'm Jeremy Blosser. My pronouns are he, him. I have been with SparkPost in the cloud technical operations and site reliability engineering area for close to 7 years. July 1st is my birthday, my cake day. I've been employed in IT for 25-ish years, and about 20 of those years I've known I was, on the spectrum, as they say. Back then it was Asperger's syndrome. Since 2013, the DSM criteria have changed, and now autism, Asperger's, and other related things are all autism spectrum disorder, which is super great if you're a person who cares about precision and the differences between things to all be in one bucket, but whatever. Today I'm here to talk about what living that particular kind of neurodiverse life has been like, how I've come to understand myself and those like me better over the last 20 years, and especially the last several, and some of the ways those of you who aren't like us can hopefully come to a better understanding of our perspectives, how to include us, and at least not exclude what we have to say. Here's a file photo of me taken by my team during an incident. Here's a more recent photo of me during the TLC Summit wearing 31 pieces of SparkPost swag for that contest in true awkward, over-the-top, neurodiverse style. What you don't have here are pictures of my family or my pets or my hobbies, because sharing personal info at work is hard, and this talk is going to totally put me at that capacity. So you can see those another time. Some caveats here. First of all, I'm not a doctor. I also don't have a formal diagnosis, which I know is an issue for some people who think everything should be diagnosed if you're going to say you've got it. I've got my opinion, my experience, those of various, therapists I've worked with. I've got my reasons for not getting diagnosed. I'll touch on those in a minute, but I just want to be transparent and honest up front that I'm not trying to give professional advice here. I'm not a doctor. I'm a fellow employee with life experiences. As Michelle said, I've been promoting getting some neurodiversity talk into our inclusion efforts at the company for a while now, and was asked to share that more broadly today, and I'm able to do so. I don't know if I'm happy to, but here I am. I'm also not all neurodiverse or autistic people, right? Neurodiversity encompasses a lot more than autism or ADHD. It covers pretty much any situation where somebody's brain works differently from other people's for whatever reasons, different from the majority or the norm, though if you added us all up, we might outnumber you. I don't know. ASD, ADHD, dyslexia, anxiety, depression, PTSD, dyspraxia, the list goes on. Even differences between like extroverted and introverted people can be an easy way to talk about what neurodiversity means, especially in a world that's for a long time been run by extroverts. Inside any one of those classifications too, you're going to have a lot of variation. If you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. There are similarities and there's underlying stuff that's there, but the presentations look very different. But regardless, there's a lot of diagnosed, undiagnosed, self-aware, completely unaware ASD people, especially in the IT field. All those types exist at our company, I'm sure. So my hope is that, talking about this generics of living a different life helps you kind of have your eyes open to what normal versus typical versus not typical actually means. That's my goal. Certainly some people have a level of autism or other conditions that require support to get through their daily life in a way that is, survivable and functional. I don't want to put that down, but for a lot of us, we just need understanding and some flexibility. I'm also not a cat, but I do like the stock. Hinted at a little bit already, but this is really hard. I've been a public speaker for a long time. I've done probably hundreds of hours in front of thousands of people. This is probably the hardest talk I've ever done. There's a lot of stigma associated with autism, and for those of us that are high functioning or can pass for neurotypical, for a long time there's been a very silent but very iron rule that's if you can pass as neurotypical, you pass. Don't stand out as weird. Don't be Rain Man. Great movie, but don't be Rain Man. The clinical or the dictionary definitions are getting better, but the one that's still out there, it's a serious developmental disorder that impairs the ability to communicate and interact, right? Goes on to say treatment can help, but this condition can't be cured. I think this one was a WebMD or something. I just look at the words there, serious disorder, impairment, treatment, condition, cured. It's right there in the DSM, definition off CDC site. It's a disorder. It's deficits. That's how you measure it, right? You can look this up and read it yourself what the specifics are, but it's all focused on compromised function, developmental problems, and other lack of normal functioning. That's what's all over the literature. So like that stigma takes its toll on people, certainly. Even for the functioning ones, a recent study found that the rate of suicide of those living with ASD is 3 times higher than the rest of the population, and it's more than 4 times higher if you're a woman. That data is still being evaluated for the why. At first they thought, well, they have trouble integrating and getting jobs, but they actually found that the difference is the largest between autistic people who are employed and their neurotypical colleagues who are employed. So there's a lot there. Very clear. I'm in no way suicidal. It's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that there's a very real risk here in being this transparent with you that I start getting rejected. There's a risk that when I come to your engineering squads with, my intense style to talk about reliability improvements and things we need to do, that I'm going to get an internal reaction of Jeremy's autism is talking again. I don't need to worry about that. That my reputation becomes my condition instead of the value that I bring to the company, which is, informed by my condition, certainly. But I want to keep doing my job. This is the why of the diagnosis part for a lot of us. We aren't eager to go out and get something on our permanent record that says we have a mental disorder, right? That's not a thing we want to wear around our neck, especially if we're generally high functioning. In my case, I haven't needed a diagnosis for support services or to learn about myself. And a lot of the support that's out there for people, again, is so focused on this is a disorder, we're going to fix you, that more and more neurodiverse people are kind of opting out of those things and then looking for other options. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. This isn't just self-indulgence to talk about this, though. This is welcome to my brain. This is what it means to be a neurodiverse person. How honest and transparent is it safe to be without being disregarded? I wouldn't do this anywhere I think that I've worked, but at SparkPost, but I'll do it here. Ultimately, some of us have to do this where we believe we can take the risk. We have kids that are coming up in the world. The world's trying to be a better place in general. I am very high functioning. With great power comes great responsibility. So I'm trusting you all to make this not a thing that, I regret. I'm all about the risk management, engineering knows. And so I'm trying to manage my risks here by talking about it. But there we are. So what does autism mean to me? To answer that, we should talk a little bit about what causes autism, except that we have no idea. We've known about it for a long time. It gets some study, but again, most of that emphasis is on it's a disorder. How can we train or medicate autistic people to look normal? And if we can't get them there, then how can we give them support to let them survive? But we have a really poor understanding of what causes it. The DSM is fundamentally an exclusion of diagnosis. It's a list of things you might have going on with you, but then these things can't be explained by some other condition that we know the cause of. It's a thing that you have these things and we don't know why. There are theories, right? Genetics, environmental influences, brain physiology around synapse function and brain inflammation. It's probably a combination of things, right? A few paths that all come together to equal autism, or maybe 3 or 4 different start points that trigger some underlying thing we don't know about. It's like a spectrum, as I mentioned, a continuum. It looks different for everybody in severity and symptoms. So maybe it's a bunch of things that added together equal autism, but look different depending on, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, right? I can tell you that the things that mean the most and resonate the most with myself and others like me who I've talked to are a couple of more modern ideas that go by names like intense world theory and polyvagal theory. I'm not going to get into all the details there, but basically taken together, this is the view that whatever is different about our brains causes us to take in like way more sensory input than normal people. We hear, we see, we smell stuff other people aren't aware of, and we're aware of it all the time. And that triggers like a nervous system response that has to shut some of that out so that we can survive. This is our world, and I like flinch when I see this picture, and maybe you do even if you're neurotypical. I went for a bright one on purpose, but our life kind of feels like this, plus a jackhammer, plus a sewage dump all the time. Doctors for a long time have talked about autistic people in terms of limited sensory perception, like we're not aware of sensations or our surroundings. We don't have empathy or know how to read faces. And we don't feel that that's true. We feel that it is the opposite, that we see everything and too much, and we have to stop paying attention. We have to filter it out the way that if you walk out and see the sun, you're going to block your eyes so that you can keep functioning. That's what it feels like. A lot of us have a story of the first time we learned our sensations weren't normal. For me, it was kind of when I learned that, when I learned late in life that not everybody who's smart but socially awkward is on the spectrum, that there's a difference there. It was when, I was looking at a survey or a question and quiz, and the question was, true or false, when you think about a food, the texture is as important as the taste, possibly more so. And I was like, well, yeah, of course. Why would you eat food that felt weird? And my wife was like, I have no idea what food feels like. And that was kind of mind-blowing to me, because I will not eat food that feels wrong. There's a lot of foods that I like the taste of that I can't eat, or I have to like do what this slide shows, throw some stuff on it to change the texture. This is why I oversalt my food. It's not about the sodium or the taste. It's about the feeling. Big fan of the MCU, huge fan, lifelong of Spider-Man. And there's this scene in Civil War when Tony and Peter meet, and Tony's looking at his suit and puts the glasses on. He's like, wow, can you even see through these? And Peter grabs them, and he's like, yes, ever since the change, everything is so loud, and I see everything, and it's hard, and the glasses help me focus. And y'all, 41 years old, grown man sitting in the theater with my kids, I cried at that, because, what if my hero since birth, what if the spider sense has always been autism? Because that's just, I really wish I had those glasses. You've seen Soul, new movie from Pixar. There's a scene, I'm not going to spoil much, but it's, a character walks into New York City for the first time, and there's this, he comes through doors, and it's loud, and the jackhammer and the crowds and everything. And it really captures what what intense world feels like. We feel that way all the time. That's what the world is like. On the good days, those are the ones where we can filter out the stuff we don't need and let in the stuff that we do need. The bad days, it all gets through, and we just try to get by. And that can happen whether you're in New York City or in your living room, or you're sitting in your cube at work or in the middle of a meeting. Regardless, for us, the sensations are so strong, the theories go that eventually our nervous systems decide there's a threat, and they move into fight or flight mode, which you're all familiar with, right? There's a bear, run away, or there's a mugger, got to fight or run away. And sometimes it goes beyond that, polyvagal says, into a freeze state. For a neurotypical person, that goes away. The bear's gone, the mugger's arrested, right? And you go back to this normal social interaction, easygoing mode. For us, the sensory stuff never stops, so that we never leave this state. sometimes when we get into it. And I'm not, that's like not hyperbole. There's parallel study on somatic processing that has people that have been in fight or flight for decades with all the hormonal imbalance and adrenal fatigue that causes. And their symptoms look similar to ours in different degrees. Also, PTSD sufferers see some of the same thing. What does that actually mean? Well, it means a wall of text right now, but I'm going to read it. Welcome to my brain. We always have a sense that we're under threat and need to fight or flee. It's not conscious. Usually it's subconscious. We're not like paranoid tinfoil hat mode. Sometimes that happens, but it's more just this general dread of there's threats everywhere. Everything's a trap. If we become aware of it and can verbalize it, we're usually exhausted because that's just really freaking tiring, or we're operating with limited spoons. If you know that analogy in psychology, or I like to talk about spell slots from D&D. The concept there is just we start the day with a given amount of capacity, and when it's spent, we're done, no matter what's left, until we recharge. Along with that, we have diminished capacity for necessary tasks, including food and hygiene. Pathological demand avoidance is a thing that happens where, it's not that we resist doing a thing we don't want to do. It's that needing or wanting to do a thing makes it a demand, makes it a threat, and we have a hard time doing it. I'm starving, but I can't eat because I don't know why. Because it's a threat to our brain. We have tunnel vision and other focus issues. We have difficulty choosing between options without exhaustive research. Everything from what condiments do I want on my sandwich to what product do I want to buy. We have difficulty with moderation and intuitive measurements and finding the edges of things, how much condiment to put on our food. We're clumsy, again, because our filters are off, so we're not like really sure what we're seeing. It's all blurry around the edges to our brains. Difficulty processing trauma, change, or unexpected events. We'll repeat the same story 100 times because we're like taking it out, looking at it, putting it back in, trying to make it fit so we can move on, and it doesn't fit, so we tell somebody else. We repeat it. We use the same words. We have a tendency to engage in escapist behavior like games and collecting because those are areas where we control the sensations, right? It's not the whole world. It's a tunnel vision, and we can control the horizontal and the vertical and everything else. We forget things that aren't in front of us. I'll talk about that more later, but if they're out of sight, they're out of mind. And we engage in repetitive movements and behavior, stimming, the classical rocking back and forth, my arms swinging around when I'm talking. That is like a stress response. It's a flee movement. My body's got energy, adrenaline for fight or flight, and I'm trying to use some of it up subconsciously or consciously so I can focus on what I'm doing with this talk. And we talk a lot. Haha, ND joke. Here it is in meme form, right? Funny meme. All these are hilarious. I can laugh at all of them. I also know what all of them mean from firsthand experience. And when I'm in the middle of any of those, it's not funny. I need to step on this leaf or I will die is a real thing. No lies detected here. Whoever came up with if you step on a crack, you'll break your mother's back is an asshole. I am 45 years old and I can't step on cracks, not because I'll break someone's back, but it feels wrong. This sidewalk would literally give me a problem. Although if I can be distracted, if my wife is saying, come look at this tree with me, I won't even see the sidewalk. But if I'm in a state of, fight or flight, I have to walk through that carefully, which is nuts, but there it is. As I said, your mileage, it's all different. Your mileage may vary. If that understanding is useful to you, great. If it's not, look for more. I'm not a doctor. Again, everybody's different though. If you've met one autistic person, even assuming those whys are true, it looks different in everybody. It looks contradictory between people, or sometimes even in the same person, sometimes even at the same time. We can be very nonverbal or very verbose, hyper-focus or can't focus, lawful good or chaotic neutral in life, very high touch or want to be left alone, very expressive or not expressive at all. This is all sensory reaction stuff. Sometimes both, sometimes all at the same time. It's confusing to you. It's confusing to us. It's confusing in our relationships. The social stuff that everybody knows about, again, the doctors say that we have deficits in social ability. We lack empathy. Again, we think it's something else. We think we see everything. Y'all communicate like 20 or 100 different things on your face. You're not even aware of most of them. And we're supposed to care about 2 of them, right? Those are the ones you're trying to send. You're aware you're sending those, and the rules are those are the ones that matter. And it's frustrating because it feels like y'all have picked arbitrary things that matter. Stuff that we think should matter gets ignored. And if we get it wrong, if we read it wrong, if we respond wrong, the costs are huge. And it just validates the idea that there was a trap. We stepped into it. One of my earliest memories of being different, I was a kid in school riding the school bus with friends. One of my friends' little brothers were on the bus. They usually rode a different one, but they were there. I was hanging out, talking to them, joking. I don't think I was being a bully or anything, because that's not me. But at one point I looked up at my friend and he was just staring daggers at me, and he said, "Jeremy, shut up and turn around." And I did. And I didn't talk the whole way home, and I heard laughing behind me, and I have no idea what the hell I did to this day. He never brought it up. We were still friends. But that was like many of those stories of times I peopled wrong and the world got a little scarier. The stuff that matters to us that doesn't to other people, we don't like people being fake. And for us, that includes like avoiding the hard topics, relying on the subtext, using the white lies to be nice to people's emotions. That just like pollutes our data stream and makes it really hard to know what matters and what doesn't. It doesn't help us. So don't do it with us if you can avoid it. Although, the world is a carousel of walnuts, and there's been some recent work that says this may not be a neurotypical thing as much as like an American white culture thing. Black culture in America is saying they struggle with this as well. So side note. Also socially, sometimes you'll encounter the stop time effect. You'll be in a conversation with an ASD or neurodiverse person. You'll be in a meeting with me, and we'll be talking, and you'll ask a question, or you'll make a point, and all of a sudden you'll say, "Jeremy, did your video cut out?" And I go, "No, I'm still here." And it's overwhelmed, it's processing, it's lack of capacity, and I'm trying to get it back together and talk. And sometimes we get past this in a few seconds. Sometimes it takes longer. My wife knows sometimes it takes days, and she made me put this slide in because like it's really jarring. Sometimes we have a conversation and it kind of stops, and then 3 days later you walk back in and you just start talking like you just push play on the conversation again without any context. That guy. Okay. Real reaction. Eye contact sucks. That slide's there to scare me on purpose. Moving on. I thought about putting a warning to myself, but there it is. It's just freaky, y'all. It's major sensory input and confusion. Like the common knowledge is make the eye contact to be successful. The firm handshake. Just no. I even as an adult with my kids told them, tried to teach them, you got to make eye contact so people know you're listening to them because they're staring off at the wall or something else. And then one of them eventually, "Dad, I can listen to you or I can make eye contact, not both." And I'm like, that's so true. It's just how it is for us. So if we're not making eye contact, it doesn't mean we're not listening. And I said, slow down talking. I'm sorry, that happens too. Ultimately, in social situations, what we all hope for is this: everybody together. At most, we're the weird Klingon among the group of fetties having the meal. But pretty often we end up feeling like this. We are out of phase, Geordie LaForge, invisible, stuck in a table, trying to get Data's attention. What does it hurt and help? Time check. Doing all right. Okay. Kind of what you'd expect if you think about all the other stuff I've said later when you're watching the recording, trying to digest it all. Fight or flight for everything, right? If we're under stress, we're having a conversation, fight or flight means we argue or we withdraw from the conversation. We don't really have a third option. If we're under that overwhelm, we might have one later when we're calmed down, but that's an easy place to get. We feel like everything's a threat. Again, subconsciously, the object permanence problem means that we have the walking through doors problem is the common way to say it. I walk into a room, I see, I need to do that, I need to do that, I need to read that book, I need to fix that thing. I walk through the door, it's all gone, clean slate, new room. Oh, I need to do that. The other room doesn't exist, like unless I work and remember. True story, literally making this slide deck, talking to my wife. She mentioned object permanence. I was in the door jam. I walked through the door to pick up an index card and a pencil to write it down. I forgot what I was going to write down. I walked a foot back through the door to where she was, and I had it back again. Welcome to my brain. Perceptions between us and other people are skewed because, we're speaking a different language and perceiving things differently, and our relationships are hella impacted. We get stuck on details that are ultimately irrelevant, including the story I'm not going to tell here. I'll skip it. We have piles of context, cause and effect. Everything matters. you ask us a question and we're going to tell you everything from the beginning of the world that led up to there. It's the meta of this talk. I can't tell you what it's like to be me without telling you what I think autism is caused by, because A leads to B leads to C, and you'll understand it better, my mind goes, if you have all the pieces that I have, even though it makes for a long talk. We have a lot of difficulty finding the edges of things. Again, the whole moderation piece means it's really hard for us to read metrics, which is really hard as an SRE. Like, full disclosure there, I'm fine developing metrics, building monitoring systems. I'm really good at alerting. The good stuff is on the next slide, I know, but like the metrics, the forecasting, the budgeting, I leave that for other people. That's really important to me. We have it so we don't get caught out. But, you know, Chris, Ballou, Dave, if you're out there, I rely on y'all for that stuff. We have a lot of performance and relationship anxiety because of things like that school bus story. We overanalyze every expression, every word somebody says. They didn't say a lot of words. They said a lot of words. What does it mean? Do they hate me now? Even though we've been best friends for 20 years because they smiled funny one day. You know, it's very focused on us because everything's a threat. Rejection sensitive dysphoria, look it up. It's pain. Our focus is out of our direct control. Hyperfocus is one of the worst things in the world. Imagine you have a thing you love, a new hobby, something. Imagine you're spending a little bit too much time on it. Now imagine that even though you love it and you're spending too much time on it, it's stuck in your head. You can't stop. You know you can't stop until you get it out of your head, which unfortunately may mean doing it until you hate it, or doing it until something else grabs your hyperfocus and you move on to that and abandon the other thing, and the research and the enjoyment and the memories and the money you spent building out that hobby. And you're like aware it's happening, but you can't get out of it. Hyperfocus is hell. Soul has a great moment on that. If you've seen it, when they're down in the zone and seeing the people playing the piano, writing the books, loving their life. And then you go down to the one stuck, zombies rolling boulders around, can't get out of it. That one really spoke to me too. You know, it's one thing if a person is aware of their condition and what's going on there and can start coping and listen to things like this and read the books. It's another if they don't know what's going on. The world's just chaos, and it's really hard. I have been there. Some of my kids have been there. Some of y'all maybe haven't. What does it help? Whether we can cope or not, our superpowers, go autism superpowers. We see the details nobody else does. If our filters are working, because it's all there, we can dive into tasks at levels nobody else can. Hyperfocus can be a great power. The low object permanence means I can walk into a project, right? I walk out of a project at work and forget it exists, and all the Jira tickets and Epics and Asana boards don't really help with that. But I can walk back into it 6 months later when the priority comes back around, get my bearings and go. Relationships are like this. This weekend, I called a friend I hadn't talked to in 10 years, said, here's my last 10 years. Give me yours. Okay, we're resynced. Let's go. And it's like we haven't spoken since the day before. That's not an autistic friend. She's just a great friend who understands this about me. And it's why we can stay friends with 10 years of not talking. Welcome to my brain. We can be really good at crisis management because surviving and adapting to chaos is just our normal state. So like the house is on fire, the MTAs are down, COVID, these aren't state changes for us. They are stake changes, right? Fake threats versus real threats are very different things, but we're always operating in the observe, orient, react, decide, adapt loop. And crisis is just whatever. That's the next thing on the agenda. We have an encyclopedic knowledge of our areas of focus. We excel at implementing standards because they remove ambiguity. You can all laugh at me about change management now. It's okay. We're always prepared for everything, right? Humperdinck is the patron saint of autistic people. I always think everything could be a trap, which is why I'm still alive. You know, my wife and other spouses of autistic people like to joke about, you know, have the joke of, my husband carry a huge backpack with everything in the house everywhere? Yes, he does. Are we ever out on the road and need something and don't have it? No. So there you go. I kind of hate this part of the talk, though, because it feels like justifying, you know, the bad is worth it. Employing us is worth it because look at all the superpowers. Bottom line, you know, it's valid. But we're people. We have value. We don't always like to do the good outweighs the bad talk. Anyway, my story is limited time here. So first job, corporate America, in IT, contracts to hire, eventually became a senior there, 7 years, sentence fragments, sorry. I excelled there, right? I got promoted, I got raises. I had bosses who valued my contributions and my 100-hour work weeks and everything. And they would screen for me, you know, the corporate political environment stuff that went on. But some of it got through, you know, criticisms about my appearance. I had a big beard before it was okay. The hipsters hadn't made that okay. I had a big beard before it was cool. I had long hair in corporate America. My clothes, business casual, which for me meant like 4 of the same shirt in different colors and several pairs of the same black pants, very uniform, because I can understand that fashion is crazy sensory confusion rules. You know, the moments of being absent in meetings briefly, confusion about my work hours. My rhythm is very different. A lot of autistic people, we work later in the day because we aren't tied to the sun like regular people are, or we're backwards. So I negotiate like 10-hour start times wherever I go. But I had a boss's boss director who was Mr. Early Birds Gets the Worm, 7 a.m., was confused why I wasn't at my desk every day at 7. You know, lots of lectures on people's perspective or limit where you can go in your career. And then one day I ended up working for a boss who wouldn't screen for me and got pulled into his office, and this reaming around the time I was working after hours, and the VP came by and tried to say hi to me for a while apparently. And I never heard him because I was head down, no headphones. I just couldn't hear him. He was convinced that I was being mean to him, complained to my boss. I got yelled at. And then my boss went on this binge about, you know, you're freaking weird, dude. It's like you're autistic or something. It's okay to be different, though. Like, we need to hire different people, just like we need to hire women and minorities. Which, like, dude, ouch. I didn't stay there much longer. By some analysis, I guess he's right. I am autistic, and we do need to hire for diversity to get different opinions and culture add, but just, yeah, not a good take. Around the time I left there, though, I went into politics, and some of you know I was in volunteer politics, activism training, up through semi-professional campaign management and staffing work, held political office in the party system. And I was really good at it. I was a freaking mentat for doing people, because like all the political hijinks and deceit and subtext that goes on, like I could see through it all because none of it's real. It's super not real. The political corruption temptations are there, but they weren't my reason. They weren't my hyper focus, so I could ignore them all. And I basically went as far as I wanted to go. But you know, you can't hyper focus on that forever, and I had to get out of it. Maybe if we had more autistic people in politics, though, the world would be a happier place. I don't know. How can you be inclusive at work? Because that's the point of the talk, right? Now that we're finally here through A, B, C, D. Recognize one size doesn't fit all. The important thing here is understand, like, you have a thing you want people to do. Please try to separate the ones that actually matter for the success of the company from the things that are just your preference, right? You like a thing does not make it morally right or wrong. You may not like a thing that's morally right, or like a thing that's morally wrong is the other side. But adjust for things that are just preferences. Even for the ones that matter, try to tweak your expectations and be as flexible as you can, especially for the social stuff, especially the things that are easy and obvious, and everybody should do these things in a successful company, right? So some examples there are sharing personal information. When the exec team came in and started pushing core stories, it was terrifying. It was panic attack inducing almost. I know it's important stuff. I really appreciate that when I raised that point in the culture committee, those things became explicitly optional, just because I appreciate being heard. But also there is an aspect where being told it's optional makes it easier for us to actually engage in it and do it. All the remote work considerations, right? Video on in meetings, work hours, an hour flexibility, travel expectations. We're doing all these things better during COVID, but eventually we go back. And in COVID, it's more and more video. You know, understand those things are hard for us. They are important, but they're not obviously easy for every person. We have to be video on sometimes and off other times. We know we need to travel and see you in person. We're remote workers, but it's difficult. So just understand the mental expense. Icebreakers and social events are hard. I appreciate Spark Post lets us schedule a lot of our own, and I have my D&D game. Y'all should join, even if you don't like D&D. Let us be social together the way that are comfortable to us. Distractions, right? Don't use your phone and laptop in meetings. Good advice. Understand that for us, with sensory overwhelm happening all the time, a lot of times we reach for distractions. We stim to bleed some of that off. Sometimes we need to be distracted so we can hear you. And I know that sounds weird and it's not intuitive, and policy probably can't line up with it, but talk to me more about it offline if you want more info on that one. Permission to stim, to rock in a meeting, to get up and pace and not have it be weird. My desk is covered with all my stim toys, right? Literally, if you hear clicking during meetings, this is what you're hearing. It's so I can hear you. Fashion and personal hygiene are real things, especially for non-aware people. Try to not let it be career limiting. We're all trying our best. Friendly advice is welcome. It may be a little embarrassing, but we can usually hear it. We don't like the false, we like the truth. Again, none of these mean just do it our way, or those things don't matter. Just understand their cost. Help us understand the benefit versus the cost. There's the help word. Many of us are already there, but for the less aware people, it's going to be a struggle. Give us direct feedback so we don't have to guess. Again, we don't do as well with the subtext, all of us. Asking us to give feedback about ourselves, HR people, that's really hard. It's very overthinking. It's very, what do I need to include and what do I leave out? Because we know we're going to give too much. What's important, we don't know. We need to do it, we understand, but it's hard. It's okay when we're talking too long to ask us to move on from a topic. I can say to my kids, okay, kiddo, you're giving me this story for an hour. I can't hear any more of it. Do you need to keep going for your own sake? Or do you need me to hear it? Because if you need me, you got to come back later. And, we work that out. You can do the same in meetings when we go on too long. You can say, hold on, I need to think about that. Just don't be curt. Don't dismiss it. If we give you the context, it's because it matters. Try to do some active listening and tell us what you heard us say. Story time here with permission to share. Last Friday, I was in a meeting with SRE with my team. Charlie was there, CTO. My new VP, Dan Fong, was there. Start of the meeting, my first new work interaction with my VP. Charlie asked for an update on a project. Have you done this yet? And I said, no, we haven't. We're not planning to, and here's why we're not planning to do it. And we get to the end of I get through my explanation, and Charlie says, so that's a no, and he kind of moves on. And I laughed, but it was devastating. I'd socially screwed up. I'd read it wrong. I didn't understand it. It was on my brain for 2 days. And I talked to Charlie about it because Charlie's good at that. And he apologized and he asked for help. And he's got me looped into his communication deck slides. And this is what I was trying to do. This is the communication techniques. How do we adapt this for neurodiverse people? Spark Post is a safe place to talk about this stuff. And I really appreciate that. Here are some citations. If any of this sounds like maybe I have some of this or whatever, it's in everybody. But, if it's limiting what you're doing, if it's deficit, the AQ test is a formal instrument developed out of Cambridge by one of the more conventional autism research teams in the world, Baron Cohen's team. You can take it online and maybe it leads you to talk to your therapist or a doctor or your friends or family, or just do some more research. There's the DSM criteria. There's an article there that's really good on intense world theory. Polyvagal theory Wikipedia page, which will tell you why people like it and why there's a lot of scientific criticism of it. I don't know that polyvagal theory is right. I do know that fight, flight, flee absolutely plays a part in what we live in sensory overwhelm. Now, questions.